So they go in and say, hey, you guys should pass this ordinance for the city of Charlotte that says anybody, private sector, public sector, can use a bathroom of the gender that they choose. Is that accurate?
That's correct. So we passed a bill saying Charlotte can't do this. And then the bill also said you have to go in the bathroom, locker room of your based upon your biology. The head of the HRC came to my office and said, Governor, I'm going to make you the George Wallace of the transgender movement. And tomorrow, when we leave this office, you'll see videotapes comparing you to George Wallace. And we're going to have protesters in 5 cities come in Asheville, Charlotte, and you'll have protesters everywhere in Charlotte. I had an African-American chief of staff. He got up. He was furious because his parents were civil rights pioneers in North Carolina. It was pretty tense.
All right, guys, when we left you on Friday, it was like early evening. President Trump kept going till Eastern time because he was on the West Coast in LA till almost midnight. That's when they officially called the lid, meaning no more public events at like 11:30 at night. And then, by the way, he gets up the next day in Vegas and keeps going. We're in for an entirely new 4 years with this administration. He is getting things done. It's night and day. He went to North Carolina to visit storm damage, then to LA, then to Vegas, and he even made it onto the floor of the casino, urging people. I mean, it was crazy. And then, by the way, then he leaves there and goes to Miami. That was just the weekend. That was just the weekend. I mean, I think he did more in the first 7 days than Biden did in the last year. And I'm not kidding. I mean, think about it. It was just crazy. He after North Carolina, it was a very moving event there. I'm going to talk in a second to Governor Pat McCrory of North Carolina about that meeting, but he went on to LA. And the one thing that I thought was fascinating, he tees off on Karen Bass, the mayor there, who's highly incompetent. But it felt like he had this level of familiarity with the LA area, like he was a neighbor asking for help to another, to fellow neighbors. The tone was very much like, I know that guy. I know what he's going through. I know what they're digging out of. It's just, it was unbelievable. It was like he lived there and he had a shared experience. He signed an order to open up the pumps in the north. Millions of gallons of water now can flow through California. He then has this roundtable, and Mayor Karen Bass, some other elected officials are there, and starts talking about the need to cut red tape, the idea that people are like champing at the bit to get rid of debris and start to rebuild, and the stupid bureaucracy and regulations in California and LA in particular are holding it up. So I want to show you, I mean, he starts going after her.
People are willing to get a dumpster and do it themselves and clean it up.
And they can.
There's not that much left. It's all incinerated. And, it's just going to take a long time. You can do some of it, but a lot of these people, I know that guy right there that's talking. I know my people. He'll be on that thing tonight, throwing the stuff away, and your site it'll look perfect within 24 hours, and that's what he wants to do. He doesn't want to wait around for 7 months till the city hires some demolition contractor that's going to charge him $25,000 to do his lot. I think you have emergency powers, just like I do. When I'm exercising my emergency powers, you have to exercise them also.
I did.
You know what the takeaway is for me? That wouldn't happen without Trump. They would revert to their usual bureaucratic regulatory ways. Action is happening because of him, because he's on the ground. Unbelievable. It happens because of him. By the way, while he was out there, as I mentioned at the top, John Radcliffe sworn in at CIA, Pete Hegseth sworn in at Department of Defense, big first day there, and Kristi Noem at DHS, Department of Homeland Security, all done. And we've got some teed up for this week. Robert F. Kennedy at HHS, hopefully he gets out this week. Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, and Kash Patel, all in the queue to get votes. But J.D. Vance was on CBS, and another master class in how to handle the left-wing media. In this case, it was Margaret Brennan, DCBS. Get it? Let me just show you this because this is the ability. This is why he's so good on his feet, and he's such a benefit to this administration. Take a look.
When you talked to us in August, you said, I don't think we should abandon anybody who's been properly vetted and helped us. Do you stand by that?
Well, Margaret, I don't agree that all these immigrants or all these refugees have been properly vetted. In fact, we know that there are cases of people who allegedly were properly vetted and then were literally planning terrorist attacks on our country. That happened during the campaign, if you may remember. So clearly not all of these foreign nationals
but there are
have been properly
30,000
vetted.
people in the pipeline, Afghan refugees.
But my primary
Do you stand by
concern
it?
as the vice president, Margaret, is to look after the American people. And now that
So
we
no.
know that we have vetting problems with a lot of these refugee programs, we absolutely cannot unleash thousands of unvetted people into our country.
These
It's
people are
not
vetted.
good.
These people are vetted.
Just like the guy who planned a terrorist attack in Oklahoma a few months ago, he was allegedly properly vetted, and many people in the media and the Democratic Party said that he was properly vetted. Clearly he wasn't. I don't want my children to share a neighborhood with people who are not properly vetted, and because I don't want it for my kids, I'm not going to force any other American citizens' kids to do that either.
No, and that was a very particular case. It wasn't clear if he was radicalized when he got here or while he was living here.
I don't really
But
care, Margaret. I don't want that person in my country, and I think most Americans agree with me.
Boy, did he school her. I mean, seriously, could you, I mean, how embarrassing that she's trying to like defend a broken system that allows bad people in this country. He's looking out for us. It's refreshing, isn't it? To have a government that's actually keeping their eye on the ball and looking out for us. Unbelievable. He goes on though in the thing, he challenges her on immigration. Like somehow I felt like she literally was a Democratic member of the House, but look at how he answers this question on immigration. Beautiful.
well, this is a country founded by immigrants.
Well, this is a country
This is a
founded
unique
by.
country.
This is a very unique country, and it was founded by some immigrants and some settlers. But just because we were founded by immigrants doesn't mean that 240 years later that we have to have the dumbest immigration policy in the world.
I love that. I love that. Anyway, I reminded you before, Pat McCrory's coming up. He's a former governor of North Carolina. But here's why it's important. We're hearing about all the woke policies going bye-bye and the end of DEI. Pat McCrory as governor was at the tip of the spear of this. Remember they went after him for the so-called bathroom bill? And he suffered the consequences. Billions of dollars, companies, corporations, the NCAA, all backing out of North Carolina because he was ahead of the curve talking about protecting women and genders and making sure that you had to use the bathroom of the gender that you were assigned to. Anyway, so before I get to the one last thing, a couple of housekeeping items. Tomorrow, we've got Rob Cirilli. He's a political correspondent for the Daily Mail. He's going to fill us in. He was on that trip. What's it like to cover Trump? How much energy drinks do these guys need? Give us some insight into the scheduling for him. Plus, Enrique Tarrio, he's a January 6th recipient of a pardon. He's going to join us on Wednesday, and a great discussion on DEI later this week with Tyler O'Neill. By the way, Speaker Johnson invited President Trump to deliver the State of the Union on March 4th. It will actually be a joint address. I'll explain that as we get closer to it. But anyway, the last thing I want to talk about before I get to this is what happened with Trump and the government of Colombia. I want to explain what happened so that you'll get the full context, because the media is not going to give this to you. So President Trump and his team, led by Tom Homan, start deporting people that are here illegally that have committed crimes. And they fill up 2 planes of Colombian nationals and fly them back to Colombia. Now, this has happened several times in the past. This isn't new, maybe not at this scale. But the Colombian president says, no, I'm not letting those planes land. What do you mean you're not letting, you've let planes land before with people who are your citizens who are being brought back? So Trump immediately says, okay, now I want to show you this on the screen, but I want to read a little of it too. I was just informed that 2 repatriation flights from the United States with a large number of illegal criminals were not allowed to land in Colombia. And he says, he talks about Colombian President Petro denying the planes there. So I've directed my administration to immediately take the following urgent and decisive retaliatory measures. Emergency 25% tariffs on all goods coming to the United States in 1 week. Those tariffs will be reached raised to 50. A travel ban and immediate visa revocation on the Colombian government officials and all allies and supporters. Visa sanctions on all party members, family members, and supporters of the Colombian government. Enhanced customs and border protection inspections. IEEPA, Treasury, banking, and financial sanctions to be fully imposed. And these measures aren't just the beginning. Well, let me fast forward the story for you. They caved. The Colombian government was like, okay, land your plane. We're sorry. You know, the Colombian government tried to say, oh, well, it was a military plane, not a commercial plane. They've all, okay. But let this be a lesson to you. Donald Trump is back, baby. And he knows the powers of government that he has at his disposal. Did you see the complexity of that response? It wasn't just some outrage like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to lay it out formulaically for you. I'm going to crush you and your economy, and they will blame you for your little PR stunt. Man, this is leadership. This is a guy who is back. And I'm just telling you, this is what we need more of. This is what makes a difference in our country. Getting results, following through on your promises. I love this. All right, I want to bring in Governor Pat McCrory to talk about the visit to North Carolina, how it's different, how it played, plus, and most importantly, this woke agenda dying and what it means for us. Before I get to that, if you made wellness part of your New Year's resolution, there is no company in America that aligns more with the Make America Healthy movement than my PhD weight loss. I told you guys this before if you've been listening. My buddy Seb Gorka and his wife Katie, I saw how good they were looking. I can say that. I'm confident. I'm okay. And I said to him, what are you doing? And he said, I literally have transformed my lifestyle by joining PhD weight loss. And if you go to myphdweightloss.com, you can see what I'm talking about, because it's a transformation. It's not a fad diet. I've tried them all, trust me. But because of the guidance that I get from a nutritionist who I check in with every week, I text her. She asked me to weigh in. We go over my habits, what I'm doing, what I could be doing better, helping me to lose weight and then maintain it. I'm not at the maintain point yet because I got a little bit more to go. But it all starts with a simple phone call where you are assigned a nutritionist, a real person who you talk to and who you text with, and they will create an easy to follow plan with weekly targeted goals. So it starts with that phone call. Call PhD Weight Loss at 1-864-644-1900 or go to myphdweightloss.com. Tell them I sent you, and let's get healthy again this year with PhD weight loss. All right. Lastly, if you have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, do what I do every night. And I did it last night. I tried Beam's Dream Powder once again. I love this stuff. I had trouble at the beginning of 2024. I started incorporating this into my nightly routine. 1 scoop. Put it in a cup of water, put it in the microwave for 30, 40 seconds. I mean, you don't have to do what I do, but I'm just saying that's what I like. Warm it up a little, 30 minutes before bed. And I'm telling you, when your head hits the pillow, you're out. It's all natural. It's got all the stuff that we've probably tried before: magnesium, melatonin, reishi, theanine, all that stuff. There's a reason why a ton of professionals and athletes use it, because it works. So if you want to sleep better, longer, and wake up feeling refreshed with an all-natural product that tastes amazing, go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. That's shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code Spicer to get up to 40% off for a limited time only. All right. It is my pleasure to welcome into the show Governor Pat McCrory, former governor of North Carolina, former mayor of Charlotte, North Carolina, and a former member of the Homeland Security Advisory Committee. Governor, welcome. Good to see you.
It's good to be. Thank you very much, Sean. Appreciate it.
Yeah, normally see you in the morning meeting. We love to bring you in and get your insights. So it's nice to have a long chat now.
I like to give the outside DC perspective. Sometimes
that's what I'm
need
looking
that
for.
Inside the Beltline.
So the president, speaking of outside the Beltway, went down to North Carolina to view damage down there and then went on to LA. I want to start, and by the way, I really want to get to I mentioned this before, but I want to talk to you about the evolution of the DEI, the woke agenda, because you were at the tip of the spear. Everyone knows that. But before we do that, obviously, I do want to get your, how did Trump's visit play first in North Carolina?
Extremely positive. Extremely positive. He showed strength. It was a fantastic move to let the people impacted have the microphone. He listened intently. I thought it was everything a leader should do. And I believe I've had to deal with a lot of hurricanes as a governor and a mayor. and storms. So, and you know, the Western North Carolina people are a different group. They're very resilient, very independent. They hate government. People have no idea. It's like the Wild West. And so for them to open up about how they really feel, I think it opened the eyes of local media of how the state and FEMA has failed North Carolina.
You know, you mentioned some of the stories that I heard when people were speaking, and I did love the fact that President Trump, both in LA and there, was getting a perspective that we don't hear. How are the people on the ground doing? Holy smokes, like crazy. But I was amazed, to your point about the resilience, this one woman was talking about how she was sleeping on the floor, helping to facilitate getting water to people. One woman was so grateful for a cup of coffee. And my heart went out and thinking, you forget about sometimes these storms and the impact that they have maybe a week later when the media leaves and it's not top of mind anymore. So just give us a perspective. How are they doing and how is FEMA doing? Because that was part of the big discussion. You know, is FEMA actually getting help to the people who need it?
Well, first of all, the people, especially the middle class and the poor, are doing very badly. You've got to realize in the mountain area of North Carolina, it's a very rural, poor area. Among these mountain streams that go through the valleys, you've got a lot of trailer parks. And the only place you can put a mobile home or trailer is on a creek. And those creeks flooded and just wiped away so many of these people. So there was a lot of poverty in that area. I know the area extremely well, but these are the type of people who do not like to ask for help. They are just, believe me, I know them extremely well. They're very independent. It goes back to the Revolutionary War. You know, they agreed to help the colonies fight the British, not because they were really for the colonies. They just hated the British too. I mean, it literally goes back to that time period. And every valley is its own country. And they're very libertarian. And parts of them are very liberal. Others are very conservative, but they're all libertarian in a way. So they're hurt. And regarding FEMA and the state, the bureaucracy, and finally the media is interviewing the people impacted. The bureaucracy is, I know this, it's just they have to go through so much paperwork. Part of it's justifiable because there's a lot of fraudulent actors out there. And to stop the few fraudulent actors often makes it difficult to get the real services to people. But I delivered a bunch of supplies up there. I have a house on Lake James that got hit pretty bad, only an hour and a half from Charlotte, where I live. It's terrible. I mean, a lot of people got impacted. And but I'll tell you, the private sector stepped up. Samaritan's Purse, Franklin Graham, who I was glad to, I consider him a close friend. Samaritan's Purse is one of the best organizations ever. They know what to do. And there was an example given where we delivered all these supplies to these warehouses in these small towns, but there was nowhere then to deliver the supplies out, 10 miles away from these small towns. And that means it's a total failure. If you just get the supplies to a warehouse, doesn't mean you get the supplies to the people in need.
Hey guys, I hate to interrupt this conversation with Governor McCrory, but I've said this before, if you're a longtime watcher, if you have a fire extinguisher or a first aid kit, you do so because in case of emergency, you want to be ready. That's why I have one of these. It's a Life Vac. And if you go to lifevac.net, you can get one too. In the event of a choking incident, a Life Vac makes anybody a hero. I couldn't believe this. I got a call a couple weeks ago and they said a listener to your show bought a Life Vac and saved a life, and we wanted to let you know. I kind of feel pretty proud about that. But it doesn't take much to do it. You put it over, you pull it out. You don't have to remember what maneuvers work or not. Anybody can be a hero in the event of a choking incident. So go to lifevac.net to get yours right now. Literally, a life could depend on it. There's a reason police departments, fire departments, EMTs, restaurants, cruises, everybody's getting them now because they know anyone could help someone in the event of a choking incident with their own Life Vac, lifevac.net. All right, back to the discussion with Governor McCrory. So when President Trump was talking about getting rid of FEMA and empowering the states more, as a former mayor and governor, is that something that you thought was a good idea, or is that does the federal government just need to be revised, like how they do it, versus get out of the way entirely?
It's probably somewhere in between. I think what you need to do is have the states more responsible. I had an emergency operations director who was the best during Hurricane Matthew, where we lost 28 people. But he was incredible. And I've told you in the past, the morning meeting, they put me through training in my first month in office. We had our teams together before the storms occurred. And so to me, much more responsibilities with the state. And frankly, I think it's more with the governors and the mayors, and they've got to have their act together. And they're the number one responsibility.
You know, it's funny you brought that up. I asked you about that in the morning meeting once, and it's so clear when a disaster of some sort hits a state or locality, who's done the training like you did and who hasn't, because the way in which the response writ large, both in terms of the media response and then the logistical response, is evident to me by the people who clearly went through some kind of training and were prepared.
Yeah, and the training's all about teamwork. And it's not just government. This is something the media misses out on, and politicians do too. Actually, probably over 50% of the need is the private sector. Yeah. You need to get the communications back up. You need to get the electricity back up. You need to get the water back up. If you don't have that, forget all the other things. And after the communications breakdown is usually a thing. So I had partners, with the power companies, the internet companies. Those were the most important partnerships, to tell you the truth. The road construction companies. That's who needs to be in the room, frankly, more than the federal government.
So he left North Carolina, flew to LA, and you're in a very unique position to be able to critique both of this, because you were a mayor of Charlotte and then you're obviously the governor of North Carolina. And so he goes out there and Gavin Newsom meets him at the plane, and sucks up to him and bends his knee and says, "We need your help. We need you there." And then he has this roundtable very similar, or it was indoors, but similar to the one he had in North Carolina. And with Mayor Karen Bass, elected officials and people impacted. So I want to just start with Newsom and then go to Bass. As a governor, how do you think that Newsom played that?
Well, I think both played it terrible.
Why?
Because beforehand they weren't a team. They're still not in the same room together. They're avoiding each other. I don't know if I've seen Newsom with the mayor yet.
That's a good point.
And that's unheard of. That is unheard of. I mean, I've been a mayor. I was a mayor 14 years and a governor. Man, you join up at the hip and you make one of you in charge, or you make the police chief or fire chief in charge and you step to the side. And still they are not acting as a team. So Newsom met him at the airport by himself, and then he goes to meet the mayor. I mean, that makes no sense whatsoever, because the mayor and the governor and the county officials and the police chief and the fire chief and their director have to be all together on a team. And it's obvious to me that they're not. Yeah. They're all doing individual press conferences.
But let me just go back one second. Tactically, you're Gavin Newsom. Yeah, I know this is. I don't know that either of us could ever fathom that. I certainly don't have the hair, and you get emasculated by this guy on the internet. He's calling you new scum, new this, right? Yeah. And then Newsom basically says, "I'm going to just go to the plane and I'll meet you there and suck up to you." Do you think that, like, politically speaking, and I hate to use terms like this in the middle of a disaster, but do you think that politically that was the right move for him?
It was the right move for him to be at the airport. He should have been he should have been with the entire team. No, it was a good move to be at the airport. Maybe too little, too late. They should have been on the phone together every day since the storm, knowing he was going to be governor. I mean, I would have been demanding to talk to the president-elect or the president and get on the phone and go, "Hey guys, we're in this together." I mean, I had to deal with several presidents as mayor, and Obama as although Obama did not come to North Carolina, I don't think he wanted to help my opponent. My hurricane occurred a month before my election, and I couldn't get Obama to come. Hopefully it wasn't due to politics. And it wasn't in my hurricanes weren't in a TV market. They were in small rural towns getting obliterated. That makes a big difference too. LA is a media market, biggest ever. And that made a difference in this too.
Oh, good point. Last thing before I pivot to the woke world. The president and others, including Speaker Mike Johnson, have suggested that, like, aid be tied to some kind of reform, that California has to make some changes if we're going to, throw you a boatload of cash. As someone who's been through this, the Democrats are already crying foul, saying like, oh my God, this is so unprecedented. Which my answer to that is, well, when a storm hit North Carolina, everybody applauded your response. When it hit Florida, everyone said DeSantis crushed it. Like, the problem isn't that we're trying to just score a point here. It's that you guys are morons in LA and California, and we need to make sure this doesn't happen again. So when it comes to strings being attached, what do you, is Trump right to do this?
I think he's right to bring up the questions. Absolutely. But frankly, these are phone calls that should have been going on since the storm occurred. Okay, what are you doing right? What are you doing wrong? Have private conversations going, how can we work together? There should be no politics in a storm, but sadly, politics, if you do a bad job, they're politics, and if you do a good job, they're politics. But if you work as a team, everyone wins.
Yeah.
And so I think most of this communication should be like planning for a military operation. You don't do it in public, you do it in private and get everyone in a room and go, okay, what the heck are we doing? And
right.
Why aren't you changing this? Why, and why is the state and city doing this? And the state might be going, why is the federal government doing this?
Exactly.
Don't show the dirty laundry at the first step. Maybe show it at the second or third step if you can't get agreement.
All right. So President Trump, among other things, like literally in the inaugural address that he gave a week ago, which blows my mind that it's been a week. And I feel like it's in Biden world, that's like 4 years. He said that he's declaring there's two genders. He doesn't want the trans agenda to spread. He doesn't want boys and girls bathrooms. You were at the tip of the spear on this, and North Carolina paid a massive price. So just walk us back for people who might not remember what happened and what went down.
Yeah.
Talk to us about what the media dubbed the bathroom bill.
Well, it goes real quick. It goes back to 2016. The group called the HRC, Human Rights Campaign, worked together with the Democratic Governors Association, the Hillary Clinton campaign, to make this a major issue. And I said at the time on Meet the Press that the HRC is as powerful as the NRA. And I was laughed at. What are you talking about? I said, you have no idea. Because the HRC threatens business. And if you don't do what we say, we will boycott you. NRA threatens politicians. But so they went after Pence initially. They were going to defeat Pence in Indiana. Remember the Religious Freedom Act?
Yeah.
Pence fell apart on George Stephanopoulos. Well, then Pence got selected in July or whatever to be the VP. The HRC moved to North Carolina. I had never heard of this issue. And they came to Charlotte, where I was mayor for 14 years, and they convinced the very liberal mayor to pass a bathroom bill, which forced all private and public sector people to adapt to gender identity and gender expression, are the two words, which we now call trans. We've combined them too, and force even the private sector to allow anyone they want in their facilities. And I called him as governor. I said, don't pass this. This is ridiculous. Stay at private sector, do anything they want, as far as I know, but you can't force them as government to do this thing. Well, they voted
just so I'm
that.
clear, the HRC, the Human Rights Campaign, moves into basically says, okay, we can't go after Pence because he's going to be vice president, maybe.
Right.
And so we'll go to Charlotte, North Carolina, and we're going to tell the city council and the mayor in Charlotte, hey, you should champion this bathroom bill, which lets anyone go into whatever bathroom they identify as the gender. Is that an accurate?
In the private sector, too.
Okay. So they go in and say, hey, you guys should pass this ordinance for the city of Charlotte that says anybody, private sector, public sector, can use a bathroom of the gender that they choose. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay. So
and not only bathroom, locker rooms, you name it, anything.
Okay. So keep going.
So I told him not to as governor. And these were people I know extremely well. And they did it anyway. It was a 6-5 vote. And immediately my legislature said, the heck with this. They can't do that. And I agreed. So we passed a bill saying Charlotte can't do this. And then the bill also said, if you want, you have to go in the bathroom, locker room based upon your biology. And this only on government building, North Carolina government buildings, rest stops, schools, and North Carolina government buildings. The media portrayed it as all businesses and everything. Never was that. It was only government buildings. Because I felt as a conservative, it's not my job to tell the private sector how to do things. So we passed that, and I signed the bill, and within a week, I thought it was common sense. Within a week, our state was boycotted from Bruce Springsteen to Ringo Starr to Amazon to PayPal to the ACC, the NCAA, the NBA All-Star Game, and this was all a month before my election. And I was canceled even, frankly, big money people. I went to do a fundraiser in Washington. No one showed up for the RGA. And I went on Fox, and even Megyn Kelly questioned, what's the big deal? What's wrong with going to the bathroom next to a guy? We have doors. And she's reversed completely. And I try to explain, man, you got an issue of privacy. This is about women's privacy and girls' privacy. The bill was actually never called the bathroom bill. It was called the Privacy Act.
Sure.
The HRC was incredible. This guy told me, he came to my office, the head of the HRC, came to my office and said, Governor, I'm going to make you the George Wallace of the transgender movement. And tomorrow, when we leave this office, you'll see videotapes comparing you to George Wallace. And we're going to have protesters in 5 cities come in Asheville, Charlotte, Raleigh, and so forth. And you'll have protesters everywhere in Charlotte. And when he said he was going to make me the civil rights, I had an African-American chief of staff. He got up. He was furious because his parents were civil rights pioneers in North Carolina. It was pretty tense. But when he left the office, I quoted Will Ferrell from The Anchorman. I turned to my staff. I said, I think this is going to escalate. I mean, and
what did he want? Did he want you? So the guy comes in. First of all, I can't believe. I mean, good on you for taking a meeting. But.
Oh, he pointed his finger at me, and I had to put his finger down. And it was very tense. It was.
Careful, you never know.
But my life changed. I mean, my family got threatened. I got canceled. Money dried up, and I lost the campaign by 10,000 votes out of 4.6 million.
So I in CNBC had a story up that quote bill was going to cost North Carolina $3.76 billion. It talks about Bank of America CEO Brian Moynihan leading the largest company of North Carolina, privately spoken to businesses that went elsewhere with projects or events because of the controversy. I mean, what I know, the NCAA, they did move the All-Star Game out of North Carolina. It became radioactive, right?
Yeah, out of Charlotte, my hometown. In fact, I talked to the NBA commissioner. I'll say something I've never said on TV before. I had meetings with the NBA commissioner on a speakerphone, and he was going, Pat, we don't really care about this issue, but we're getting so much pressure. I'm having cancellations of booths, costing us millions of dollars from businesses and Hollywood rap stars and all this stuff. He said, we don't care. We set up a committee to study. And I said, I have no problem setting up a committee. It's a sensitive, complex subject. And he said, great. And we had it all settled. And then the next day, the guy, Attorney General Roy Cooper, convinced the Black Caucus not to support it, and it fell apart. And next thing I know, the NBA commissioner was on TV in a press conference lambasting us about a civil rights issue. Well, hell, I'd been on the phone with him the day before, and it was it was strictly a business decision.
Was that Silver?
Yeah. And
how many guys called you, by the way, and said like that? Like, hey, look,
Michael Jordan, owned the NBA team. Well, he makes a lot of money off of Nike, and Nike was, I understand, was coming out with a transgender tennis shoe or something at that time too. So I'd never been through anything like that in my life, and it was sad. It was pure. It was worse than the mafia. They were putting guns to the heads of these businesses, and the businesses caved. And what's ironic, some of the businesses were sitting behind Donald Trump. during the swearing-in ceremony that were very active in canceling North Carolina. And by the way, the hypocrisy at the same time, in Saudi Arabia and China, the NBA, and I tried to bring it out, but the media was in there. The media was with them. And I got to be truthful. I tried to get Donald Trump to support us, candidate Trump. And I had several phone conversations with him, and I'll let that stand. But I think he had pressure from his family at the time or something. They were pretty liberal on that issue. So I'm glad to see President Trump change in the last year on this issue, because he was kind of neutral on the issue in the past.
So on a personal level,
Yeah.
how does it make you feel? I mean, are you like, I'm glad that everyone came around to their senses. Are you a little pissed that these guys, like you said, like Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg, who I'm sure were so glad to ban you and to attack you, suddenly now standing behind Donald Trump and talking about how they're all for, stopping censorship?
I'd be lying if I say I wasn't upset, because from a personal standpoint, well, I lost my election, a chance to really do some great things on our second term. But from a personal sense, what they did to my family was inexcusable. The radical left protesters and the threats. And I even had a member of my family lose some business because she was related to me. I mean, it was radical left extremism, and I was attacked. I've been attacked in the last 3 years on this issue. I've been attacked in my car. I've been attacked at grocery stores, cussed out, still over this issue. And I've never done strong rhetoric because, I'm not a guy who is blasphemy. I never attacked anyone of the gender identity community. In fact, I had people over at my mansion, sat down with him and tried to explain it to him. And very cordial conversation. I said, I sympathize with you, but this is where I am. And I believe in two genders. And I studied the issue a great deal. But yeah, it was very tough on my family. And when I got home to Charlotte after the election, I was canceled. The cancel culture was, that was the peak of the cancel culture across the nation. Right after that, they started tearing down statues and things of that nature. So, yeah, it was kind of tough. And then how ironic, I got involved with No Labels. I got canceled a little bit from my own party. I started being called a rhino, and I'm going, how? A rhino? I'm the guy who, got shot. Not shot literally, but got canceled. And what's ironic with No Labels, I'm still a very strong Republican, very conservative. But I convinced Joe Lieberman and the whole group to put in the framework of No Labels what I believed in the No Labels agenda. And I'm very glad to see my party, now come to some common sense on that issue, because they stayed away from it. I'll conclude by saying one other thing. I wrote a letter during this time to the president, to Congress, to the majority leader, minority leaders, saying y'all need to define gender according to the 1965 Civil Rights Act. This is not, either the courts or Congress has got to settle this issue. And I understood the complexity. I did not get one response. Both the Republicans and Democrats ran from this issue. Corporate America, Bruce Springsteen and Pearl Jam did not. And of course, I said, if you're going to cancel North Carolina with your concerts, why don't you pull your records out too, or CDs and everything else? So there was a little, and Nike, why are you selling tennis shoes in our state still? As you know, there's a lot of hypocrisy. So I'm real glad to see some common sense. I don't think we ought to be mean. I let people live the way they want to live. But I don't think it makes sense for a man to come into a woman's locker room, like the swimmer from Kentucky said. I warned about this, and I was dealing at the same time, which I brought up to the meeting, I was dealing with male prisoners wanting to go to female prisons when I was governor. And that was one of the reasons I signed the bill too, was to not allow that. And I brought up women's sports in the future. And everyone said, it's not a problem. Why are you worrying about it? And I said, guys, this is becoming a problem. And so this was 8.5 years ago, Sean.
Look, I will say this. I've said this over and over again with respect to this term of President Trump. I'm a bit jealous. I wish, I'm glad I served. It was an honor. But like, there's a bit of like watching how everybody's sucking up to him now and how they're getting things done. And there's a little bit of jealousy for me because of how it's going down. So I, for very different reasons, I get it. But over the last couple of days, Pete Hegseth, our new Secretary of Defense, put out a tweet where he said the president's guidance is clear: no more DEI, Department of Defense. The Department of Government Efficiency that Elon Musk is leading put out a thing that said in the first 80 hours, approximately $420 million of current and impending contracts have been canceled. 2 leases have also been canceled. Initial focus mainly on DEI contracts and unoccupied buildings. So the last thing I just want to ask you is if are we just buying 4 years of time on this issue, or are we extinguishing it so that it never is going to root its head again?
At a minimal, we've extended 4 years, but we've exposed the hypocrisy that this was all about power and money. It had nothing to do with the issue at hand. And this became a multi-billion-dollar industry, and it needed to be exposed. And business was being, the HRC, I got to give the guy credit, as the guy knew how to threaten people. And it was all about, they were threatening the dollars of these companies and of these rock stars and rap stars in Hollywood. But since the Budweiser incident, they showed there was another voice. And I think Budweiser, and even before that, the Atlanta baseball MLB game was probably the first dent in the woke issue. Even though Georgia was boycotted, those companies like Coca-Cola paid for it. And that's when I started seeing business and even politicians pull back. If you notice, the Democrats in the presidential campaign did not want to talk about this issue. And the media did not want to bring it up. Unlike when I was going through my hell, the media was bringing it up all the time. I was a bigot and, every name. This whole campaign, they did not want to bring up. And I had Chris LaCivita, who ironically was my campaign manager at the time.
Huh.
He was my campaign manager while all this was going on. How ironic that he was Trump's campaign manager. And they ran that commercial in the last 2 months. And when I saw that commercial, I went, it's about time.
Yep.
It wasn't
that was my favorite one.
Yeah, it wasn't a mean-spirited commercial either. I mean, I don't like it when my party, and Mark Robinson, the guy who ran for governor in this area, he crossed the line. But I thought that commercial was right on. It was talking about common sense. And the soccer moms, which I couldn't get to at the time, they didn't quite understand it at the time, now have turned on this issue. The soccer moms were against me when this issue came up. So, the HRC was losing some of its clout, I'd say about 2 years ago. Even some of the banks were starting to go, you guys keep moving the line.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, right, Sean?
So the last thing I just want to just bring up, you mentioned, I've said this very publicly, all these CEOs, Zuckerberg, Bezos,
yeah,
they haven't had a change of heart. This is transactional.
Yes.
They recognize they need to suck up to Trump. I mean, do you share that view? Because I don't think that they really, like when Zuckerberg goes on Joe Rogan, it's like, oh, we don't support any of this. We just had to do it to assuage the White House. I'm like, you are so full of it, brother.
Well, when I used to call it, when these companies were canceling North Carolina, and I'd call them up and I go, is this your opinion? Is it the board's decision? Is it your management team's decision? Is it your customer's decision? Who's making this decision? And I could never get a straight answer. I come from corporate world too. So I kept going, who's doing this? And it was a business decision by the CEOs of these companies. And I understand, by the way, Sean, I get it. American Airlines, you name it, they were all being threatened. The convention center business, which is, there's a lot of people in the gay and lesbian community, which I don't use the term LGBTQ. And I get upset when Republicans or the media use LGBTQ. Nothing personal, but it's an acronym which confuses sexual identity with sexual orientation. It's a horrible acronym. There are two different issues. Sexual orientation is about gay and lesbians. LGBT is also about sexual identity or sexual expression. And they're two completely different issues. And what was the brilliance of the HRC, Sean, was, and he told me this in the governor's office, we're going to combine the two and make it more powerful. And I remember saying it. I said, that makes no sense. He said, wait, I'm combining this community. We've won the gay marriage issue. Now I'm going to get that community together with the transgender community because they're upset that they feel left out. This is what he told me. And it was, when I look back at it, it's still, you think about it, it's combined. And now the acronym LGBTQ plus, which has never been defined by the media. In fact, the word transgender is a slang term. It's not a legal term. And I'm not disparaging it, but the more accurate terms are gender expression and gender identity when it comes to, do you think you're a man or a woman, or are you biological? We've confused that with gay and lesbian.
Right.
Behind the scenes, the gay and lesbian community does not like this issue either.
I've talked, Governor, thanks for coming on and explaining.
Too much. I might be canceled again.
No. I think we know we got some top cover on this issue. I appreciate you coming on and explaining this. I'm sorry what you and your family have had to go through, but at least we've now righted all these wrongs, and the President Trump is trying to do this. So thanks for your time. I appreciate you joining us.
God bless. Take care now.
Thank you. Guys, amazing discussion with Governor McCrory. I told you we've got a huge week coming your way right now. I'm writing some cool behind-the-scenes stuff that happens on week 1, week 2 of the White House at SeanSpicer.com. Sign up there, plus some behind-the-scenes photos from my first week at the White House that you get if you become a VIP member. SeanSpicer.com. It's free to sign up. VIP members always welcome. We got a great show coming your way tomorrow and the rest of the week. Remember, we're going to talk to a J6 person that was pardoned about their experience. So much more headed your way. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.